This is my mother, rodeo queen, warrior, survivor. And this is me, her savage daughter. But what does it mean to be savage? Not cruel, but fierce, uncompromising, unconquerable. Welcome. Thank you for being fearlessly, fabulously you. If you're a woman over 50, chances are at some point you looked in the mirror and seen your mother staring back. And now it doesn't have to be a literal mirror. Maybe you look nothing like her, but it could be a metaphorical mirror where you end up repeating some of the same patterns. Even if you reject your mother's way of being, the very fact that she was your first crucial role model means that some of those patterns are ingrained, and you may find yourself doing the opposite, but you're still following the pattern if you're using that pattern to bounce off of. Today, I want to talk about the fierce love between mothers and daughters, the legacy we inherit, the patterns we repeat, and the strength we carry forward. As the second child in what would become an initial brood of 4, the second daughter, followed by 2 brothers, I grew up in what some might call poverty, but what I remember as freedom. My sister Kathy and I learned to be resourceful and independent from an early age, riding our Shetland pony Frosty across our family's 11 acres, standing up to mean goats, turkeys, yellow jacket hives, and capturing fireflies in mason jars. Our mother tackled jobs like pulling green chain for a lumber mill, or sampling Totino's pizzas at the grocery store, or selling Avon. She did all of these things to try to make extra money for our family. And before she had children, she was a barrel racer and a rodeo queen. Fierce? Yes, she was the definition of fierce. When I was 8 years old, our parents divorced. 2 years later, my father was murdered by a hitchhiker. And our family was thrown into what was poverty before it became abject poverty. And our mother also went off the deep end a little bit. Drinking, men, our country music filled our house. Lynn Anderson, I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden. Charlie Pride, let the chips fall, let them fall where they may. Take the ring off your finger and let the chips fall. Our brother Tim came along, stepfathers came and went, and schools changed like the seasons. How many of us had mothers who were warriors, who endured, who tried to smile through heartbreak, who worked menial jobs to keep the family together? When I was 15, my mother married for the 4th time, and this was our final stepfather. And her world sort of centered around him. And so even though my sister and I, we had 3 younger brothers, and we were pretty much in charge of taking care of them, making sure the household stayed together. We had very few rights. They would go away for the weekend, and we would have to be in charge of our brothers, and I just got tired of it. And at age 17, even though I had just started my senior year in high school, I left home. I was working 2 jobs, and I had enough credits to only go to school half days. And so I just moved out, and I moved in a house with 3 other women, and had, no bedroom to myself. I just had a couch, but I made it work, and I graduated high school. There was a period of, I won't call it estrangement, but I wasn't as close to my mother as I would have liked to have been, and probably, I'm sure, as she would have liked to have been after I moved out. I wanted to do things my way. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to live my life differently than she had. I got married at 23 and divorced 8 years later. I got my bachelor's. I got my master's. I was remarried and had 2 children. And at that time, my mother had followed my stepfather into the desert. She tended to go where the men wanted to go, and he liked the desert. She loved the Pacific Northwest, and we were 1,000 miles apart. But after I had my children, we became closer because she was the only one I could call and tell something cute my children had done, and she would be more excited about than I was. But then she was diagnosed with colon cancer, and it was pretty far along. It had gone into 2 lymph nodes. So I flew out there with my 2 babies. One was just barely 6 months old, and one was just under 2, and stayed with her for a couple of weeks and brought her all of these different supplements I've heard that could help with healing. I made her some healing tea and put it in these brown bottles, and they burst in the freezer. And I did everything that I could do with 2 babies in tow. And after I'd been there a couple of weeks, the next couple of days, my stepsister was going to be coming out and staying with her, my stepfather's daughter. And so I flew back with my children. And then 2 weeks later, we got the call that she had become dehydrated. She couldn't keep anything down for the chemo. And she was put in the hospital, and in the hospital she had a heart attack and died. My oldest son had been very close to her. At the age of 2, when we visited her after her colon surgery, he would sit at her feet and touch her knee, and he would climb into her lap very gently, and he was super gentle with her. And the night before we got the call to say that she had passed, he woke up and cried uncontrollably 7 times. And I kept going in and getting him back to sleep, and then it happened again. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. Then we got the call. I think children know things that we don't know. Several months after she passed, my son asked me to sing a song to him about his grandma. And so I just made up something silly about where is she, and she's living with the moon and the stars, and we would see her again one day. And for many, many nights in a row, he asked me to sing that song, and I just really wanted him to remember her. After her funeral, I burned bridges with my stepfather. Sometimes necessary boundaries are actually self-preservation. This is another lesson my mother unknowingly taught me. I feel my mother with me many, many times. And sometimes when I want to be close to her, I'll wear her mother's ring, which I inherited after she passed. And a couple of weeks after she passed, I had my boys in the grocery store, and I had them in a shopping cart. And I was going up and down the aisles, and it was quite an extended grocery trip, longer than usual. I think we were in there like 45 minutes. And so then I'm pushing them out to the car. My mother hadn't even been on my mind. And I saw her through the reflection in the passenger seat. I saw her sitting there waiting for us. And I was like, oh my gosh, we were in there so long, I forgot that she was in the car waiting for us. And then I realized she can't be there. And then she wasn't. But I saw her. And another thing that had happened is when we had our celebration of life in Oregon, we had done the funeral in Arizona, and we did the celebration of life up in Oregon. And my mother loved my Uncle Jack singing and his guitar playing, and asked me, I asked him if he could play a song at her service. And he said, sure, is there a hymn your mother liked? And I'm like, I don't know what hymn she might have liked. I'll think about it. And so I had a dream, and it was so clear to me that Mom wanted the song, Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which I knew nothing about. I knew that the Traveling Wilburys did it, I think, but that was really all. I never listened to the lyrics or anything. And so I wrote it down in the middle of the night because I wanted to remember it. And I wrote to my Uncle Jack and I said, I think that I would like this song. I think Mom wants this song. And then I went and visited him a couple of weeks before the celebration of life. And he said, are you sure you want that song? Because it's a little bit sad. And I said, well, play it for me. And I want to hear it. And then I'll decide. Well, it was all about a man who saw his mother being carried by in a hearse, and how the circle will be unbroken, will be put back together. The family will be put back together when everyone gets to go home. And getting verklempt talking about it. And I just knew it was my mom's way of telling me, it's okay, you know, we're going to be reunited someday. And my mom is a part of me because I have this habit that I can't even stop. I do this sigh. You've probably seen me do it on some videos before. And it's just, I don't know where it comes from. My mother used to do it. And people will often say, is something wrong? And no, it's completely unconscious. I think it's just my way of taking a breath or whatever. And I just sigh. And it is definitely my mother's sigh. I have made different choices in my life. Partly because I could see how my mother was hurt by some of the choices she made. She drank too much, she was very overweight, and she allowed the men in her life to dictate her life. Sometimes that meant her children suffered. But she was a great mother. She loved us. She did the best she could given the upbringing she had and the resources she had and the time and the society's expectations that she was living in. When I choose healing instead of numbing, when I set boundaries instead of allowing someone to dictate my life, I'm not rejecting her legacy. I'm actually honoring the fierce woman that she was that allowed me to become the independent woman I am. This isn't just my story, it's our story. Every woman watching this carries her mother's legacy in some way, and whether we reject her choices or mimic them, we are part of the pattern. And right now, in these chaotic times we're living in, we need that fierce maternal strength more than ever. We need the resourcefulness my mother showed when she managed to raise 5 children into adulthood and see 11 grandchildren born to them. When women come together, when we share our stories, when we validate each other's experiences, when we refuse to compete and choose to collaborate, we become an unstoppable force. And if you're blessed to be mother to a daughter or a granddaughter or even a grandson or a son, and they tend not to love your choices, that's okay. That is part of the process. You're part of the cycle. And what you're showing them is what it means to be a fierce woman in uncertain times. We are our mother's savage daughters, not because we're harsh or cruel, but because we are relentless in our survival, fierce in our love, and uncompromising in our values. Together, we are strong. We are invincible, not invisible. Together, we carry the strength of generations. Together, we can face whatever comes next. We are the daughters of wild women. We carry their strength in our bones, their songs in our hearts, and their fierce love in everything we do. We ride for them and because of them. And when we ride together, when we connect, support, and uplift each other, we become the force this world desperately needs. If this resonated with you, please share it with a savage sister you know. And I will see you next time.